Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me here. It's my first time at the MiECC, and a touch of introduction, since it's the first time for me. I belong to a private network of cardiac surgery units in Italy, but we work in partnership with the NHS, Italian NHS. So we are like the UK NHS. We are free at point of care, free at point of use. And taken together, we produce the 15%, 15% of all the Italian cardiac procedures. So this is my hospital, which is the Ince hospital, that stays in the heel of Italy, which is Puglia. We perform around 750 cases per year, which obviously is not Ankara hospital. I don't know who was for Ankara yesterday, but is probably one of the biggest center units in the southern parts of Italy. Unfortunately, our contribution to the COMICS trial has been a little bit slow at the beginning, with a little bit some bumps, but now we are recruiting at full capacity. Now, let's go for the kill. I've been assigned a very tough topic, which is MiECC, microcirculation during MiECC. Since the complexity of the topic, I thought to start from the early beginning. This is Malpighi, was an Italian anatomist, physiologist, who first described microanatomy. Those are some frog lungs beautifully described by Malpighi. Obviously, and thankfully, we have done some progress on the understanding of microcirculation since then. But still, microcirculation has been acknowledged as a black box. We know something, but we don't know much about that. It's a complex network. Probably the biggest limitation is the fact that it's difficult to have biomarkers to describe alteration, to detect alteration and microcirculation disturbances. For example, there's a common phenomenon, which is the decoupling microcirculation, because we can have very good global hemodynamic performances and still have alteration at the level of the microcirculation. Now, there are several determinants that influence microcirculation, which basically is impossible to scrutinize all of them in 10 minutes presentation. Don't get me wrong, some of them can even be handled with a old-fashioned open circuit. I'm pretty much sure that the good perfusionist, good anesthesiologist, good surgeon can maintain good blood flow during the procedure, have a decent viscosity of hemodilution and stable temperature. But there are some elements that where the MiECC system really played the best. We know those are inflammatory response that eventually lead to endothelial injury, that eventually leads to microvascular alteration and dysfunction. We know those are some images that I quite like, all the sublingual circulation. We know that has been described some times ago that the institution of a conventional extracorporeal circuit is equivalent to a moderate to severe sepsis. So again, this is probably where the MiECC system played the best, biocompatibility and reducing the inflammatory markers. Now, going back to the question, does the MiECC improve, preserve microcirculation? We have some, I would say, indirect measurements and evidence of that. We know that the MiECC reduce the inflammation states. We know that MiECC do some protective effect of end organ function, which ultimately is related to recovery, faster recovery of microvascular circulation. But then we have very solid paper about regional tissue perfusion and clinical outcomes. But in fact, when it comes to put in relation MiECC and microcirculation, there's no, I would say, many out there in literature. That's quite an active group obviously in Russia that set in relation AVR in MiECC with preserve microvascular blood flow. And obviously there will be probably a session on outcome after MiECC afterwards, and even after coronary artery bypass grafting. Obviously all these studies are followed by a very limited number of patients enrolled, and the limitation of the assessment of the microcirculation with the OPS, with the sublingual visualization. Now, to me, it's very, very difficult to draw final conclusion in the sense that, yes, we know that MiECC is linked to several, associated to several preserved postoperative outcomes. But yet, we are still missing proper biomarkers, proper way to measure and analyze microcirculation. We know that there's a very strong correlation between dysfunctional endothelium and dysfunctional microcirculation. There are some biomarkers which are gaining popularity. One of them is the glycocalyx. The glycocalyx is this structure that covers the inner of the blood vessel and makes the erythrocyte flowing in a straight way inside and its shedding of the glycocalyx is a setting correlation with the endothelial dysfunction and microcirculatory disturbances. But still has to be validated in MiECC. I'm just like stealing all these slides from you guys. Sorry for forgive me for that. Now, interestingly, the MiECC has been always benchmarks against open surgery, against conventional, obviously, cardiopulmonary bypass, against general surgery. We, as a research group, we have performed very little research with MiECC and endothelial function and microcirculation. But what we did, we thought to benchmark the cardiac surgery against TAVI. And we sought to investigate some surrogate markers of endothelial function, which ultimately may reflect microvascular dysfunction. One of them was performed with the FMD. I'm not sure if you may not be familiar with the FMD. It's something a little bit similar with the VOT that Professor Murkin was talking before about that. So and those are just patients referred to aortic valve replacement. The FMD is a technique that's similar to the remote ischemic reconditioning. You have like a blood pressure cuff. You inflate this blood pressure cuff. You elicit 5 minutes of transient ischemia, and then with a special probe and a dedicated and expensive, I would say, software, you track the dilation of the brachial artery. And the primary cause of FMD is the release and the responsiveness to the nitric oxide. This software calculates even the shear stress and other numeric measures. What we found is that day 4 after surgery, the SAVA group, the surgical AVR group, had lower response and lower dilation, and so assessed with the FMD compared to the TAVA group. But that recovered at follow-up. The second biomarker that we thought to assess is I would say, a general state of inflammation. And we did so with the human umbilical vein endothelial cells, the UVEC cells. So in essence, we took the plasma, we spin it, and we exposed the plasma to the UVEC. And we measured the percentage of apoptotic rates. It is accepted that serum from dysfunctional endothelium it's somehow cytotoxic and can determine senescence and apoptosis of the UVEC. Unfortunately, that was done in a limited number of patients, 10 patients each, TAVA and SAVA. And we did observe a tendency toward higher rates of apoptosis in the SAVA group, but that was no significant. We wanted to extend this kind of tests as investigation of markers of endothelial function even in the MiECC, but unfortunately we did not go ahead. It's maybe probably in the pipeline. Going back to the main question, does the MiECC preserve and improve microcirculation during the procedure? Maybe. We obviously need more evidence for that. I just would like to share last thoughts that we, with Prof. Angelini and Prof. Punjabi, we have been studying remote preconditioning for quite a while. And then we focusing basically of intervention of patient, etc. But for example, we missed the point of several confounders. And there's loads of anesthetic agents that may in fact impact and affect microcirculation rather than the pump or the surgery in itself. For example, even the propofol. And that's the same for the remote ischemic preconditioning. The propofol was mimicking the preconditioning, and so confounding and interfering on the result. So this is a pics that I'm collecting valves, I'm studying doing some experiment on aortic valves and flow, and in this period of my life I'm doing TAVI myself, and I realized that the interventional cardiologists and surgeons now they are refusing to do high-risk patient. They are taking on board like low-risk patient and leaving high-risk patient to surgeons. So I think in this period, surgeons has to deal with very, very complex patients, even more complex than before. So probably we need to strive for excellence and ameliorating the MiECC as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. Is there any question? Otherwise, we'll go to the last presentation from Professor